Morning, Fractal team. Welcome to our live stream. Please make sure you read the disclosure. If you're following along with us today, make sure you're doing a demo account, as this is for educational purposes only. We are not financial advisors, and this is not financial advice. Jump onto the charts in a minute. Got a bit of a sloppy market today. We have a contraction model. Usually in a contraction model, New York likes to take out both sides, both London lows and highs. We've already taken out London lows. We're stuck right in the middle. We're practically right across the board except for one on the 1 minute. No confirmation as of yet. NAS on the left, US 500 on the right. Still waiting for confirmation. London had a bearish confirmation. We had a retracement, but no real push until much later. So we've already taken out previous day's lows. Getting a bullish confirmation here. Let's see if that sticks. Ideally, we'd like to be green on the 5 and the 15. US 500 has not yet taken out these highs, which NAS has. So on the bigger fib, we are right near the golden zone, 79%. We have London's fair value gap. Just want to confirm if that's London or Asia. No, that's Asia's fair value gap coming through here. London's fair value gap is up here. And we're bouncing off the 238. We're still under the 238. That's why I'm not that interested in this bullish confirmation as of yet. We're red across the board. We are slowly getting a crossover here, but we want to be above the 238 at least. Let's see how this plays out. About 7 seconds. Let's see if this bullish confirmation sticks, which most likely will. Okay, so our bullish confirmation is there. We've had no early retracement, but we've had a lot of consolidation, a lot of gesticulation back and forth. So right now, my fair value gap of interest is right here. I want to see if I can come down here. Sorry, 1 second. Just having some issues with the stream here, sorry. Let's see if that helped. Again, our fair value gap of interest for the time being is right here. So we're now above the 238. We are green on the 5. That is what we'd like to see. We do want to see again a drawback down. Tap our 20. And our goal would be to take out London highs. Still at 79% though. That's why we're waiting for more confluence. We did get a confirmation in oil as well. I think we'll just watch these two for now. US 500 on the verge of the crossover on the 5. We're actually getting several confirmations. Let's take a look at GBP USD. So we're bearish. We have a bullish confirmation. And we have a downside expansion model. Not interested in this one. Not when you see this model, this confirmation, and we're completely counter trend trading. 15 would have to be green. Let's take a look at Aussie New Zealand, just confirmed as well. At the same time, we're keeping an eye on NAS, which is slowly beginning to retrace. So a bit of a mixed bag here. We have a downside expansion model, but we are bullish on the higher time frames. We just got a bullish confirmation. No real fair value gaps here, no real foothold. So we're just going to wait for it to touch the 238, the 20, and then see if it creates a foothold on another time frame. Right now the 20 is sitting near the 50, and we're actually right inside. It just confirms that London's fair value gap. I believe they're both in there, London and Asia. Yeah, London's the one in the green, and Asia's the one in the red. So the only thing here I don't like is the range model. We have a downside expansion. A green box, green confirmation, green across the board. Let's see what happens when it hits the 20, which is right around the 50. Let's see how long it takes to get down there. And then NAS bouncing off of the London fair value gap. Still waiting. This is still our fair value gap of interest. 20 slowly moving into it. We're still red on the 15, but on the daily we are bullish. Now we were calling for lower prices this week, So we're going to be very, very leery about getting into a buy. Especially with this range model. Now, with the contraction range model, it's where you have a tight Asia range, and then London opens up. Usually New York likes to take both sides, both London and, London lows and London highs. That's, looks like where we're heading. But I want to see. Now there is a lot of levels up here. We have our 238, which is very, very strong, the orange line. Also, we have the top of the dealing range, which it's bounced off of. So this thing could just bounce from here and continue going. But with this much consolidation, I want to see at least a decent retracement. It's given no real retracement yet. We're close to 0.5 standard deviations. I want to see this thing draw back down, touch the 20, then push up. As far as Aussie New Zealand on the right, we're right up against some high resistance right here. London fair value gap and Asia fair value gap within it. No fair value gaps here. So New York did not create one. You want to see it tap this zone, and then we'll see what if it creates actually any kind of foothold on a different time frame for us to enter. Keep in mind the strategy works across all assets, be it Forex, indices, precious metals, Bitcoin, etc. So just be ready to jump back and forth between assets because we've set alerts across multiple assets and foreign pairs, obviously the indices. And eventually you'll get quick at doing an analysis. You'll just look in the right hand corner, look at the range model, and you'll understand what's happening. And that's when the highest probability trade setups happen, is when the range model correlates with the higher time frame EMAs. Ideally, we want to be our daily trend and our lower time frame, our session trend. We want to make sure that they're aligned with each other. And then your range model, you want to make sure that it is the same, heading in the same direction. Right now we do have a downside expansion model, but we are green across the board almost. And we're bouncing off some really key areas. Now the 20 is right under the 238. So this thing could just tap down here and push up, but we'll see. Still waiting. NAS driving now up to 0.5 standard deviations. I would have liked to seen it come into the range and tap our 20, especially with this much consolidation. But it could take off just by bouncing off the 238 in the top of the dealing range. So just waiting patiently. Aussie New Zealand slowly coming back down to that 238. close to the 20 now. Now let's see if it actually creates a foothold for us to enter on a smaller time frame. Now that we've had the 5-minute crossover, we want to see it tap the 20 and reject. It could go as low as 61%, even to the 50, but we want to see a wick, and then we want to see a fair value gap kind of emerge. NAS already at 0.5 standard deviations, no real pullback yet. Where there's a 70% chance that it will come back into the range, past our dealing range. That's why we wait for that real retracement back to the 20, and whichever fair value gap is aligned up with the 20 at the time. Right now it's this one. Let's see if it gets up to here. This is bullish, so we hope that it doesn't just keep driving without giving us our retracement. We want to make sure we catch this, but sometimes you do get this runaway freight train that is impossible to catch. Or wait for the market to come to you. Can't chase this. You could jump in here and it could just drop and give us our retracement. Then you're stuck waiting for it to come back up, hoping for it to come back up. So we've tapped the 20. Now on the 5M, we're getting a candle rejection. Watching this on multiple time frames. Let's see if it creates a foothold. Now this looks like it might have taken off without us. About 33 seconds. That's a huge, huge push on Aussie NZD. So no foothold though. We want to make sure that it creates something and then taps into it. This is where people get FOMO. They just watch these candles and want to jump in. Okay, so it's created our foothold. But we want to make sure that it actually there is an entry. So it's left a pretty big fair value gap. "30 seconds. I want to see if this fair value gap sticks. One in here. 12 seconds. Four, three, two, one. So now that is our fair value gap. We'll see the market tap back into it. Now we're back at London's fair value gap. and Asia's fair value gap. So this might give us a rejection, bring us back down here and tap. NAS rejecting off 0.5 standard deviations and off of our fair value gap here. Let's see if that drives it down. The 20 is now past this fair value gap. So now we might just meet it right here, the top of the dealing range. Aussie NZD now creating a breakaway gap. Let's see if we come back down and tap. This is the play we're looking for. So it's created another fair value gap up here. And where's the highs? We'll aim for London highs. 1 standard deviation. Doesn't really give us too much room here. We wanted to get a 1 to 3. It's a 1.76. It's not really worth the risk, nor has it actually come back and tapped. Okay, right now it's tapping this fair value gap. We'll most likely reject off that. I'm not interested here. There's no room for growth. We're only going to London high. I mean, I'm sure it could go higher. But the better entry would have been down here. That would have gave us at least 276. Right now we're getting rejection. And you have to be comfortable with that. Like if it doesn't come down to where you want it, there is a fair value gap here. It is showing rejection. It'll most likely bounce off that. But that's not what we want to see. There's not enough room there for growth. It's barely a 2. It's not even a 2R. I'd be able to just walk away from some of these. So unless it comes all the way back down to the midpoint of this fair value gap, the RR, your risk doesn't make sense. I'll continue to watch it. Maybe it will. Maybe it'll come all the way back down. But it is showing a lot of rejection off this small fair value gap here. So it most likely wants to just drive up from here, but again, doesn't make any sense from there. Now it's still stuck at 0.5 standard deviations in that fair value gap. I want to see it push down. It'll most likely tap here to this fair value gap. 20 EMA slowly making its way up to that fair value gap. Getting a lot of rejection, Aussie NZD, from that fair value gap. But there's just no room, sadly. Could still come back down here. And if it did, and it gave us a foothold, I'd be interested. Here, there's just not enough room for growth. Could go all the way up to, let's take a look at where Asia's high is. So Asia's high is at a little under 2.5 standard deviations, 2.3. But again, we have a downside expansion model. I can see taking out London highs. With this expansion model, you want to be very, very cautious. Still getting gesticulation right at that fair value gap. I'm not sure if it wants to drop any lower than that. It's just not interesting at that point. Let's see if it pushes down. We'll continue to watch it. NAS now pushing past 0.5 standard deviations, has not retraced. If it hits 1 standard deviations or takes out London highs before giving us this retracement, we'll move on from it. Aussie NZD now pushing past that fair value gap. Let's see if it actually makes it down to our fair value gap of interest. That'll give us a 2.76, which would be decent. Not the best, but showing more signs of rejection from the consequence encroachment of this fair value gap. Let's see if it wants to push down further. This is the only place I'd be even slightly interested. And this is why you don't want to try to, again, chase a runaway freight train. For whatever reason, let's say somebody jumped in here. They got FOMO, they jumped in thinking that it wasn't going to go any lower than this. And imagine it dropped here or even took out these lows before pushing back up. Stick to your rules. Capital preservation, that's number one. Risk to reward has to make sense. Here it doesn't even make sense, so it doesn't even matter if it pushes up from here. It only makes sense here. This fair value gap midpoint. This is a good trade, keep in mind. This fits all the rules. The only rule it doesn't fit is RRR. There's no room for growth. Not safely. We're only aiming for 1 standard deviations. Top of London. NAS just continuing. Did not come back and retrace yet. This is where we'd be interested. A lot of confluence here. We have the 238. We have the top of our dealing range. We have our 20 EMA, and we have this fair value gap. If it hits 1 standard deviation before it retraces, we're not interested. Same thing with Aussie New Zealand, sadly. This meets all of our points of confluence. The only thing is there's no room for growth here. We're only aiming for 1 standard deviation, and that would put us under our 1 to 3 risk to reward. But if it comes down here, hits this midpoint, then we're interested. That gives us about a 2.76. Still under our 3, but decent. We're at 11 o'clock. Still have some time to find a high probability trade setup. We want to be in a high probability trade setup 1 hour, no later than 1 hour after the range confirmation. Sorry, the range formation. This is the confirmation up here. Aussie New Zealand finally giving us that retracement. Let's see if it comes back and touches our fair value gap. Making its way down. So now that we've closed below this fair value gap, there's a good chance that it could come back down here, touch this 20, and give us that push that we've been looking for. So this is Aussie New Zealand that we're taking a look at. Make sure you have a pip calculator on hand. You can Google it. There's free ones online. You want to make sure you understand the lot sizes for each individual asset that you're jumping into. Maybe it handles if you're trading futures. It's the same strategy. Doesn't matter what you're trading, what assets, futures, CFD, contracts. That doesn't matter. Keep in mind though, our indicator is only compatible with TradingView script. So we're close here to our consequence encroachment. I want to tap it. NAS now showing some rejection off of London's fair value gap. Let's see if that drives price down back to our area of interest. Another long wick for Aussie New Zealand. Not sure if it wants to go all the way down to our entry, but if it doesn't come down here, there's not enough room for growth for a 1 to 3, so it doesn't matter anyways. Either taps us here, or just takes off without us. Sadly, this, as mentioned before, does match all of our points of confluence except for our room for growth there, or RR, which is one of the biggest ones. Capital preservation, that's number 1. But we are green on the higher time frames. We're green on the 1 and the 5. We'd like the 15 to be green as well, but right now there is enough confluence. Slowly still pushing down. Let's see if it hits our fair value gap of interest. Continuing down. A little over 15 minutes left in our stream. We want to be in a high probability trade setup in the next 15 minutes. Aussie NZD is close. Just wanted to come down a little bit further, tap our consequence encroachment of this fair value gap. And we might have enough room there. NAS, unable to get up to 1 standard deviation still. Let's see if it pushes down. Just want to see if there's even any room on NAS if we get in here. So all our levels are here. This would be the best entry. One standard deviation. .41. Yeah, there's enough room if we get in here. But this is the only place that we'd be interested. There's been no real retracement for NAS back to the 20. Now the 20 is slowly getting above that 238, which is just further confirmation of our bullish trend. Aussie New Zealand still just floating between these two fair value gaps. For anybody joining us late, for Aussie New Zealand, we're not interested until it at least comes down a little bit further. Otherwise, our risk to reward doesn't make any sense. Same thing with NAS. We'd be interested if the market retraced back down to the top of our dealing range as soon as it enters this fair value gap. But if it takes off and hits 1 standard deviation, goes further, then there's no way we could have got in here. Still getting rejection. We're back into that that second fair value gap, I should say. NAS bouncing off of London's fair value gap. I could push it down. This is an interesting week. There was no news yesterday. There's no news today. The G20 meeting. And then tomorrow we have crude oil inventories. So it's a pretty slow week as far as news. When you have that, you get price action like this. Right from the get-go, right when you see a Nested model or a contraction model? You know you're going to get a lot of back and forth. NAS unable to get over London's fair value gap. Aussie New Zealand, again, still stuck at that fair value gap as well. It'll most likely push down though. The longer it stays here, the more likely it is to just keep pushing. Let's see if it gets out of there in the next candle though. NAS back at London fair value gap. Let's see if it just drives through, hits that 1 standard deviation. Aussie New Zealand still inside that fair value gap as well. This is our area of interest, but it could just push up from here. I like this setup. There's just no room for growth. Remember, only if it touches down here do we get our, still under 3 R. But we want to make sure we're doing at least 1 to 2.76. That's only from down here. Up here, I believe it was 1.7, 1.56. So still under 2 standard deviations. That's not worth it for us. Capital preservation is our most important goal. NAS almost at 1 standard deviations, and again, once it hits 1 standard deviations, we're not interested in that retracement. If it's 0.5 standard deviations, that's fine. But after 1 standard deviations, we're not interested. Let me get this out of the way, just so you can see it. To that line right there, which is pretty much tapping, or soon. So NAS might have taken off without us. It's the only area we'd be interested in. And Aussie New Zealand, just engineering new liquidity. There's people going long from here, people going short from here as well. Still nothing of interest. And you got to expect that on days like this, as mentioned before. No real news drivers today. None yesterday, and only crude oil inventories tomorrow. Usually when there's a high impact news driver on Wednesday, you'll see some consolidation on Monday and Tuesday, and then the big move on Wednesday. Here we might just see a lot of consolidation, back and forth gesticulation. Remember the contraction model and the nested model. Those are the two where you see a lot of back and forth. You want to see either an upside expansion or a downside expansion model. Those are clean. We did get some other confirmations as well, but this late in the game, we'll focus on these two assets. I believe oil confirmed. And then we saw the GBP USD. We weren't interested. Would have been a counter trend. NAS just short of 1 standard deviation. Still at that London fair value gap. Aussie New Zealand still at that fair value gap. Our 20 EMA is now right at midpoint of the fair value gap of interest. But we've already tapped it. So any kind of second retracement to it, we want to be leery because it could just push right through. Aussie New Zealand. Let's see if this candle closes outside this fair value gap. Might want to just continue pushing from here. No real retracement as of yet from NAS. And we got 1 minute left for the Aussie New Zealand candle to close. If it closes outside this fair value gap, we'll most likely either continue to push or just tap here and just continue up. But as mentioned before, there's no room there for us. About 5 minutes left in our stream. Not seeing anything of interest yet. I noticed we didn't get a notification when we went live today. We'll look into that. Not sure if the rest of you got one, but might be an issue. Take a look at it. Now it's just hovering around 1 standard deviations, bouncing off that London fair value gap. Aussie New Zealand again, just hovering around this fair value gap. Never really came into our area of interest. If we had room to grow here, if 1 standard deviation was much higher, all the way where 2 is, I would have been interested here. It's just there's no room. We get barely hit a 2.76 if it touches down here. This late in the game, it might not actually come all the way back down to that fair value gap. But keep in mind, once you become proficient, you'll be able to find a trade setup every single day. Multiple assets you can set an alert on. And there's 3 different sessions. New York session, the overnight London session, or there's the Asia session. Asia was pretty clean. We had a bullish confirmation. No real retracement, just outside the range. We did get an extension of 1.5 standard deviations. And then a bearish confirmation retracement. That came much, much later. And then an extension. So entire day yesterday didn't really offer up much. As far as Monday, New York session, we did have a bullish confirmation, and then majority of it was just gesticulation once we got down here. And this was later in the game, so we wouldn't have even entered this. This came at 11:50. Aussie New Zealand now slowly pushing down. Might be a little late now. Keep an eye on it. About 2 minutes left. Please make sure you check us out on fractaleffects.com, where we teach high probability trading. We've created the easiest strategy to trade. You can learn it literally on a weekend, practice in a demo account for about 30 days, and then you're on your own. Or you can join us live. But the goal is to make you proficient to the point where you understand what's happening and you're making your own decisions. And we're only live during 1 session. You could be trading all 3 sessions, multiple assets. That's the goal. Please hit the subscribe button, turn on your notifications so you know when we're live. Check us out on Instagram, fractal.effects. We're always uploading new educational material. We'll do our weekly review from over there for now, and then we'll eventually switch it. And in case there's ever any interruption in our stream, go to our Instagram, you'll know why. We'll post a message there. So that's our time. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you guys again tomorrow.